We should probably sit there and see.
Yeah, we're probably gonna need to see.
And then we can be on the camera and make it look like there's actually people here.
Yeah.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, we need bodies.
Yeah.
I had that in the folder. Do you need that?
We may actually get on the computer since they're so few.
I am good. I actually saw her come in, so.
Okay.
But I can give the other one to Nina.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Sandy just gave
Oh,
me-
she's good. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate
Okay, no
that.
problem.
That's pretty exciting, but I haven't
Always
even.
get like
I have another, I have a blank. I have a blank.
Okay, well, like when I see somebody win like that,
They're supposed to let you know before they come, and I have
Well,
a 20 other people, that doesn't mean anything, so.
well, no, I know, yeah, you're right,
In
no.
case.
I would not feel that way. There are definitely football teams that I would
Right.
feel that way about. But I guess it's
I have to remember to delete that subject, right?
I've been bored with it.
Do you want a formal introduction or just want to?
Running out.
That one? You want me to formally introduce you or just want
I'm
to?
gonna have a heart attack pretty soon. I'm gonna have a heart attack pretty soon.
I don't know. He's, I guess
Of course,
it's me now.
yeah.
Oh, wait a minute.
I'm a Peter, I mean, you know, and he's talking to us and we're just, you know.
Stop down to see you, you were there.
You're required to take a seat since there's.
I don't know if he cups. No, but I'm enjoying this, but I'm enjoying this right now.
They do a strong arm and one round on the rest of the arm.
No. They do seem to.
Wondering whether I should run back and grab a sweater. It's not as cold in here today as
I'm
it
not
was.
trying to get it, I'm just.
I just got.
Oh, I get it.
So how are things going?
All right, just taking it day by day, he goes tomorrow for more testing, so. See what lasts.
He's not in.
No, he actually lived with me, visiting containment. He's been saying he's a foreman and got out Tuesday. And he goes tomorrow for more testing up there, so rather than drive back and forth, he's just staying with me for a little bit. Figure out what's going on. Yeah, I know that one. He gave me a list of things to get while I'm down here. So yeah, get this and this and this. So I got, after we're done here, I gotta run and get some things.
Your earrings are pretty, I like those.
He's probably get voices on this side.
Yeah, flashy.
But I find it great on her.
We can start if you want. You can.
Want me to introduce you?
Here, yeah.
Not proud of him.
You want it?
Well, she was gonna be surprised. I don't know.
You never know.
Tomorrow.
Hey, it's my pleasure to introduce Wendy Atkins. I'm going to talk to everybody about genealogy. If you did not get a copy, we have these surveys. And again, these surveys are not to evaluate Wendy, but to evaluate the speaker series. These are up on the table up there. If you need one, I'll give you a copy right now. And it's just really to give us some feedback to make this improve and get better as time goes on. So I'm looking forward to jumping back into genealogy again. So I'll turn it over to Wendy and teach us how to find our ancestry. Thank you.
Okay. As a lot of you know, genealogy is actually one of my passions, family history and doing research to find out who these people were who kind of made up our families. The yellow bookmark that I gave you has an address, a web address on the back, and that is actually the address to this particular website, which will help you when you're not here or when you're at home to access the information and actually get to those sites that I'm going to talk about today. But the first off thing is, what do we want to know when we're doing our genealogy? Who should we start with? Who do you think we should start with when we're doing our genealogy?
Your parents.
Our parents, yep, that's a good one. Well, we can start with ourselves. And the essential thing to start off with is to write down as much information as you personally know. Okay, so if you didn't take a look over here on the side, there is what's called an ancestral chart. Some people call it a pedigree chart. And on this you would start with you, your parents, their parents, so your grandparents, as much as you personally can remember about your family. And this is where we start when we're doing our family history and our genealogy. And although this one just has names, the other one is what we call a family group record. And that's where you can record the mother, the father, and all the children that belong to a family. Because you're going to find all these people. You know, you're not really just going to be looking for who are my parents, who are their parents, but you will accumulate all the history behind these particular families. I forgot to do it because I left my phone here last night, but I was going to take a photograph of everything I have accumulated at home. And just as an example of what you can accumulate when you get started on this information. The essential thing though is to keep it organized, which I have sadly not done. So if I'm like doing research, I come across something and I'm like, oh, this is really good information, and then I go back to my other records and it's information I'd already found out. So that's why you should try and keep a log of the research that you do and the information that you find and where you find it. So we can get started by accumulating that information about ourselves. Another thing that we can do is to interview a relative. Maybe you can think of an older relative that you have, an aunt, an uncle, a great aunt, a great uncle who are still around. Give them a call, contact them, see if they're willing to have you come and ask them some questions. And one of these papers is some suggested questions that you can ask. Many, many years ago, it was the absolute best thing my husband and I ever did. We actually went and interviewed his great-grandmother. She lived to be 102. We managed to get her when she was 100.
Oh.
And we set up an invitation, and she invited some of her children to come along as well. Now, bearing in mind, they were in their 70s at the time, but they added so much to what she could tell that it was just a wealth. And I busily wrote down, thank goodness I wrote down everything she said, because we taped it as well. And now I can't find that cassette tape anywhere in my collection. So it's very good to write down the information that they give you. Then when you go home, you can figure out and kind of put it in order. And make a digital copy. It's digital now, not necessarily cassette. So if you can record it, or if you can somehow have a computer there that will record what they're saying, and that's really good too, because you'll always have that living image of that relative. And I'm sure when I said that, somebody maybe popped into your mind. So write that name down, so that when you go away today, you can say, oh, I'm going to contact Aunt so-and-so and see what she knows about the family. And don't dispute anything that they tell you when you're doing research. And I know I'm going to call a little bit on my experiences. My husband's great-grandmother, she, just in this conversation that we had, said that my husband's father had 7 brothers. Well, we only ever knew about 5, well, including him. So, and for many, many years, and now bearing in mind, she died in 1982, so that's around when we interviewed her, that was always in the back of my mind. But I never found any evidence that what she said was true until last year. And I managed to find a record for one of them. He died very young. He died between the censuses, because he was born between the censuses. So he doesn't appear on any census, which is one of the best things that is out there for us, is the census records. So you have to just keep looking. So don't dispute what they say that you feel might be just somebody's rumor and they're not sure if they're right because they're so old. Because you never know, they might be proved to be absolutely spot on. So when we've gathered some information, where do we go? There are several very good free resources on the internet. And I'm all an advocate for free because, hey, it's not going to cost me much to take a few hours here and there to do this research. One thing that we do have, and this is available, I believe, in public libraries as well, is AncestryLibrary.com. Okay? When Ancestry Library first came out, all it gave you was just the documents that they have in Ancestry.com. It had nothing else, no real extras. However, what they've added to Ancestry Library is the personal family trees that people have added to Ancestry.com. Now, if you access through Ancestry Library, you will not be able to create your own tree. That is their paid portion of their service. However, you have access to just about everything else that they have available, including images and ways to download it. Searching is pretty much exactly the same. So, and on this card, I've given the addresses, but if you're actually on this site, you can click on the link that's on here and go straight to it. Ancestry Library is available, as I said, if you're in a library or on campus. So if you're on any computer in Kent State University, you can access this for free. Whether you're in the library or you're in here, you could check with your public library if they have access to it. Some public libraries actually subscribe to Ancestry.com, and so you have that access there. But you still, in those particular instances, probably would not necessarily be able to set up that family tree, which everybody talks about when you see the ads for Ancestry. So let's go ahead and jump here to AncestryLibrary.com and see what it looks like. Okay, and you'll see here that they present you with just an overview of what there is available. Now, my thing is I just say, let's not worry so much about everything, I just want to search. But right here on this page, if you look here, are the charts and forms that the examples of which we have here. So if you want blank forms, you can just come in here and you can download and print off your charts, your research calendar. A research extract is where you would write down what you found in a particular record. But also here, they have blank census forms. And these blank census forms will look just like the census form when you see the image. So if you don't want to print that image, and I have to admit, sometimes when you print those images, they're minuscule and they're hard to read. But so you can hand transcribe the information pertinent to your family that's on a particular census. And that really helps. Of course, if you're really organized, you'll have a folder for every different family in your tree. And you'll just be able to go and say, oh, okay, I've got this information, as we build that information. So we're starting out pretty early in our research, so let's go to the search. And you can see here it gives us a list, but we want as much information as we possibly can, so we're going to go to all categories. We don't want to limit ourselves at this particular point in our research. And right here we have our basic search form. If you look below that first search form, you can limit where you're going to look to the USA, to the UK and Ireland, to Europe, Canada, and Australia. So these would be limiters. For example, I come from England, so if I'm researching my ancestors from England, and I know they never went to the United States of America, I would select UK and Ireland and limit my search to just records from that area. What will happen is, if I was searching my English ancestors and I didn't pick one or left it on USA, it would find a lot of people with my ancestors' names here in America. So just bear that in mind, that we want to limit where we look. Now, if you had an ancestor that came from there to the United States, you might want to leave it on the United States or not select one, because then you're going to look for records in both areas. I'm going to start with a search, which, just to give you an example, and then maybe we'll go with somebody that you suggest. And it's very good if you're thinking of who to start with somebody that you knew was alive either in the 1930s or the 1940s. We're very, very lucky in the United States to have access to the census records for 1940. They embargo those census records for 72 years because at one time they figured most people don't live over 72. And if you can think back yourselves, I bet you know quite a few people who are still alive who actually appear on the 1940 census.
Did you say alive or born?
Me? Oh,
Or was it that?
you would be an example. You would appear in these records. Well, some people don't like that fact. The census is supposed to be very private. And what's frustrating for me, doing British research, is that they embargo their census for 100 years. So I only have access to the 1911 census. You know, so when they came out with the 1940 census, it really, really started to make research a lot easier for us here in the States. And I'm going to put in my father-in-law. This is the name he went by. Oh, Smith's very, very hard to research.
Thank you, I know.
Now, I happen to know that he was born in Smithsbury, which is in Beaver County. And then it's going to give you some suggestions here, so you can select if you see it come up. And I'm pretty sure he was born in 1929. But what's really nice is, see this where it says exact? You can select a year range, okay? So I usually go, if I know the person fairly well, their history, I'll select the plus or minus 2 years. If I'm not really sure, plus or minus 5. You're getting it really far out if you go to the higher ones. But if you don't find anything, then expand your search. So we're going to select this plus or minus. If you're not exactly sure whether Smithsbury or where they came from, you can do this particular limit. So you want to limit to this place or to that county and adjacent counties. You'll find, especially in this area, our families like to jump the river. So you'll find them in West Virginia and Ohio records. So if you're not entirely sure, you might want to expand it to the adjacent counties or states, etc. So I put in my very basic search and we're going to do our search. Anybody have any questions at the moment? Okay. And here's what I said we now get with Ancestry Library. This very, very first one is somebody's personal family tree. Okay? Here they say that this John S. Adkins, by the way, they have his name wrong. This John S. Adkins, according to their records, now this is the one thing I want to stress, is that these family trees can have a lot of inconsistencies in them, these personal family trees, because it's somebody who's done their research, they found information. As I said, right here, I personally know that they have his name wrong. But he went for most of his life as John S. Adkins, although he was born S. John Adkins. His first name is actually Squire. So when you come across people's family trees, you want to take the information in and use it as a guide to finding the more correct information or confirm that that information is actually correct. And in fact, I'm not sure that his mother's name is spelled right. I've seen it spelled 2 or 3 different ways. And what you see if you click into this family tree, and we'll go ahead and do that, is an overview, all the information that they've accumulated on this particular person. And over on the right-hand side, they actually have his parents, and down in the list of events in his life here, they don't have too much about him. They don't have his spouse, they don't have his brothers and sisters, etc. So this person has come across this information, they've added it to their family tree. Good information for us, but we want more. We want to find out more. And the one thing I will stress is that as you do your research, I think we start to learn and we start to yearn for those stories that go with these people. And that's what builds our families and the knowledge that we have in our connection to them. All those little stories that other people pass down or post on the web or put on their trees. And you want to accumulate those because those become that more than the facts about your ancestors. It brings them to life. So looking at this, we can see that he appears on the 1930 census right here. And you can see, if you scroll on it, you can see an overview. But if you click on it, we can actually take a good look at the overview. We can look at the image itself. And the wonderful thing about zooming is you can actually zoom right in on your ancestor here. And here he is with his family. See him here? He was actually 5 months old at this point of the census. So who can tell me what information we can glean about him from this particular record? This is the first record we found.
Siblings.
Okay. Yep, the siblings. He's got a few. Yep, where he lived. Okay. Oh, where his parents, who his parents are, where they came from.
His sex.
Yes.
And his race, either white, black, or Indian.
Well, it's
usually on those two.
sometimes, yes, sometimes. And you can scroll right across here and see a few different things. Every census has different information. Some censuses, like the 1910, I think it is, everybody was required to put the month and year they were born. Okay? But from this also, because their age is on here, we can do simple math and figure out when they were possibly born. Okay, we might not have a month or a day, but we can have an approximate year. So that gives us the next people to search for in our tree. Okay?
But on this one at census, it does say S. John Adkins, like you said.
It does.
S.
Yes. His name is S. John Adkins on this tree, but you won't find very many records of that. I actually, on a personal level, had an argument with my mother-in-law about his name. And sadly, in the end, of course, I won. But she was adamant that his name is John Squire Adkins, and I'm like, no, I've seen records where it's Squire John, and this one here is prime. I mean, he's only 5 months old. His parents should know his name. In this particular one. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of a caution here in Ancestry. Try not to use this back button too often. You want to use this button, this back arrow, and then we're in this particular record again. Well, for some reason, if you use this back arrow, it takes you back to that image. So you always want to look for this all results right there. Okay? And sadly, if you get sidelined and go off somewhere else, that might not be there. And several times I've had to redo my search, just pure and simple because I haven't been able to get back to where I needed to be.
Which one did you use?
There was a little arrow,
Yeah, okay.
and then it said all results at the very top. Okay. Now, if we had not found him here, and actually I don't see him here for a 1940s census either. There are limiters right over here. If we were looking for his marriage, we could try and limit to find, because as you can see, well, it's not too many here. This was one of 11. But if we were doing Smiths, we could have come up with thousands of people. And you can scroll from page to page to page. And what's really good is they do try to present to you the ones that are closest to your search. But occasionally you might have to go back and kind of revamp your search a little bit and tweak it. It all comes from practice, trial and error. What's really good for us, let's go back into this record here. In Ancestry.com, the one you pay for, all of these records you can store in your own little toolbox and add them to your family tree. Well, we're not subscribing to Ancestry, we have the cheap version. So we can email these documents to ourselves, okay? Now, what it does is, it keeps somewhere in here, and I've not found it yet, it keeps it in My Discoveries. So it keeps track. But if you go here, you can click on it, put in your email it to yourself so it stores and gives you access to these records. Make sense? Gives us access to what we need. Also, here's that all results. See it there? Sometimes you will also see hints over here. They'll come up with a list of hints. Okay, for example, this is the Social Security record, which is inaccurate for this man actually, for him, and we can see this record. See over here, suggested records. So what Ancestry is doing is it's trying to find other possible matches for you to look at. Okay, so you don't have to keep going back and forth. If you see something over on this right-hand side, and you're like, oh, yes, this I think is mine, just follow that track and find what you need. Okay, something else I wanted to talk to you about is one of the things that's in this particular, it's on my guide. So we have found out that his father's name is Millard. And his father was born in West Virginia. calculate this. 1873. Okay. So now we're taking one step back. Now we can also go forward because, as I told you, Grandma Catherine told me that John had 7 siblings, and there was only 2 on that particular list. Okay, so if we can find him in the 1940 census, we can find his other siblings too. Okay, so here's Millard. Okay, and I don't think this is who I was looking for. Hey, give me, here, I don't know how I managed to do that. Okay, once again, look, it doesn't look like he's here for much of anything. Okay, so we can edit our search and add to this particular search. Well, we also knew there's more options here. Okay, we also knew that he was married. So we're going to look for him with his spouse. Okay, we can do that. Now what did I was practicing with this morning. So we know he was born in 1872, so we want to see if we can find him. Oh, let's add on the 1880 census. Okay, and right here I went into that census list, and it gives you a list. It comes up with everything, but I'm like, nah, let's just go to the 1880s. Okay. And what's really nice is you can just kind of go over here and look and say, yeah, that doesn't seem to be him. And then they're going to throw all these other people at you just because they have an M or N. Okay? But don't give up if you can't get to where you're going. Okay, I seem to have lost him completely. So we don't want to give up though. Okay. Here's what I made notes, but I can never read my notes.
Search button there,
Okay.
or an update.
What was that?
There's a new search and an update.
Right. I'm actually trying to find, it is here. It's not in this one, it's in all categories. This was why I was going this way, because I was having trouble finding him. And I found his record on Find a Grave. Find a Grave is a wonderful, wonderful resource. And don't you know it's gone? Why would you think Find a Grave is really good?
Good record.
And you know, most of it is done by volunteers. Yep, and I've completely lost him. So let's actually go to Find a Grave. You can jump to Find a Grave from Ancestry if you find the record. Okay. But it's a great place to just search, and there's a link to this on that website that I put there. We can search 154 million grave records. That is an amazing number, but very few actually compared to what is out there. Okay, so we know his name is Millard Adkins. We know that he was born in Oh, no wonder. Millard Adkins was born in 1902. No wonder I couldn't find him. I put in the wrong year. And here we go. Okay, if I'd have put in the right year, that's why you need to take records and write it down, because I didn't write his year down. This is where Find a Grave is really, really helpful. Now, sometimes you'll just get, this person appears in this cemetery, okay? Other times, people have actually gone out to these cemeteries, they've taken pictures of all those headstones in that cemetery, and then, once it's posted, other people can come in and add information. And somebody has added all this information about Millard. Okay? So now, if we couldn't find him in the 1940 census, we can figure out why. He died in 1939. So you have to piece all these things together as you're searching. So who would we look for in 1940 in the census? We would look for John's mother, if we were looking for more information about his family. So it's a process of elimination. You just have to realize who you're looking for and find those events that kind of come together. Now, this particular young man was killed in a foundry accident here in town. But this particular record for him, as you can see here, tells you where he was born, when, where he died, who his parents were, who his wife was, where he died. But somebody posted the newspaper article. So you don't have to go search the Evening Review to find that. That was the original record I had, was the copy from the Evening Review. I got it from the public library when I was first doing research. But somebody has actually transcribed and put this in here. Tells you everything there is about him up until this point of his life. And then they also put these wonderful links to other graves in Find a Grave. Okay? These are, they always say that calculated relationships, but I can assure you most people don't put them on there unless they know that that's one of your siblings or that that's your parent. But from right here, we can find out who Millard's parents were. Okay? Squire Hampton Adkins, that's where my father-in-law got his name, obviously now. And Catherine Jewel Adkins. Be aware also that that may not be her maiden name, that might be her married name. So when we search for women, it's really, really hard sometimes. Because what we really need to know is their maiden name in order to find their parents. Catherine's maiden name was not Adkins, that was her married name. However, Mabel, Millard's wife, her maiden name was Adkins. And we find that out as we do other research. Marriage records are one of the few records that are out there. There's a lot less of those than all those other substantiating records. So sometimes it's pretty hard. And sometimes you might find that for years you'll be completely stuck on a line because you can't find that woman's maiden name. I, as a hobby, index records. A lot of the records that you'll find in Ancestry and in FamilySearch.org, the other very, very good free resource out there, a lot of volunteers index all the records that they have that are on microfilm or they've been digitally photographed, and you go through them. And I can assure you, women get lost. I mean, in a lot of those records, they're just known as Mrs. You know, Mrs. So-and-so, Mrs. Paul so-and-so, if you can even get that first name for the husband. So it is rough looking for women. It can be pretty rough looking for women. So just in these few minutes, we've managed to go from ourselves to parents. So I've taken, because we're here in the States, I've gone from my husband to his parents, to his grandparents, and now on to his great-grandparents. So it doesn't necessarily have to take long to start to piece it together. And it's when you find these other relatives out there or ancestors that you can find those stories that go with. We've come up with some fantastic stories that go with my husband's family. My family, we were the serfs of England. We worked the land. My family never moved more than 25 or 30 miles from where those original roots are. But my husband has tons of colonial relatives, people who came here in the 1600s, but I've only found that just over time as I've done research. The interesting thing is, and I just want to say, something will get you interested in following your family tree. What really got me interested was, and this was probably 30 odd years ago, was when somebody told me that my father-in-law, the S. John Adkins, and his wife, Mabel Adkins, both of the same last name, came from the same town in the same county in West Virginia. Now it's like, and they weren't related. Okay? Absolutely incongruous to me. I mean, they had to have been related some way. Because, wait a minute, how many families can be in this little tiny town in Lincoln County, West Virginia? I can assure you, we tried to find this little town one time, and my teenage kids in the back seat were like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? And we ended up giving up. You know, because we were like miles and miles up this back road, and you know, if we hadn't had the kids, we probably would have got it. But that's what really got me interested, was to try and prove that they were related. Well, guess what? They're not related 7 generations. And yet they still lived in the same town in West Virginia. 7 generations before I found a common ancestor in that family line. So they were right. They were not related in any close form that we think of as being related. Does anyone have some questions?
I do have a question. That find a grave site, and when you pulled him up, does it tell you where he's buried?
Yes, it's
Okay.
at Plumley
'Cause I couldn't see
Cemetery.
it from here.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Yes.
the plot and everything, does it give you everything?
It doesn't necessarily. Sometimes it does. It just depends on what information the volunteers have put in.
Oh, okay.
But yes, definitely, it said he was in the Plumley Cemetery. We actually have visited that cemetery way up on the top of a hill on the way to that town we never got to. And still to this day, very, very well maintained. You know, up there, the grass is always, there's no apparent caretaker, but the grass is always kept. There's flowers on a lot of the graves to this day. And those are the other things. Once you start to accumulate, maybe you want to go and visit these areas. You know, I spent some time in the courthouse down there. The kids out in the car with my husband didn't enjoy that either. So you might want to think, let's go by myself or with a friend who might be interested as well, because it's just, you know, not a thing for teenagers. And I've put a couple of little things here under this on this webpage, talking about evaluating your search results. We kind of talked a little bit about that. The catalog itself, you can actually just search specific collections. So if you're looking for a very, very specific collection that might appear in Ancestry Library, you can search it. Now, the caution here is, these collections are by no way all-encompassing. Okay? If, for example, there's one they've recently added is the US yearbooks. Well, I can tell you now, that's not every yearbook of every high school in the United States of America. So don't get disappointed if you think, a yearbook, I might be able to find him, and you go in there and you don't find anything. Which is why I tend to prefer doing the general searches. Search the whole collection. everything they have, because they're going to find those people first that suit your search. You know, I don't even go into the catalog unless, you know, something really takes me off somewhere. And it's usually like I get 3 or 4 and then I'm like, oh wait a minute, you've got to go back to where you started. The other one I wanted to talk about is under this additional resources tab here, and this is called Family Search. Family Search is the other very good free database out there. What you have to do here is you can search it for absolutely, well, you can do everything for absolutely nothing, actually. If you want to find images of the records, you have to get an account. It's absolutely free, as you can see out there on the right-hand side. You would just go in there and just set up a free account. If you don't do that, when you come across a record and it's got an image with it, you won't be able to get access without them saying you have to get an account. So get yourself a free account first. Similarities, yes, to Ancestry, but different records as well. It was in this particular database that I found a couple of children who died between censuses because someone, or this particular company, have purchased, I would presume that's how they get hold of these records, is they purchased the Pittsburgh cemetery records. Okay? I've never found those in Ancestry, but I found them in here, and it helped me find 2 people that I didn't even have a rumor of, actually, in this particular case. So right here, once again, here's your search. And we always want to search the records. Genealogies would once again be people's genealogies that they put in to this database. Does anybody have somebody come to their mind that we can do a search for?
Okay, this isn't gonna be like, under family search? You wanna do it under family search?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Oh, okay. I just wondered because like I actually went in under Ancestry.com and like inserted pictures and stuff myself.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
You have an account?
No.
Okay, but you
I mean, somebody did it for me
Oh, okay.
and then, I had an account, but I don't know what it is now because that was like my granddad. Like I put my granddad's picture.
Yep.
So.
Yep, you can do that. Yep, you can do that. Anybody here?
Yeah, we'll try this one. William McVicker,
That's his last name is McVicker?
yes,
Vickerer?
we think.
Okay. Do you know where he was born?
Yes. Well, I just have PA.
Okay. Do you know when?
Probably between 1795.
Oh, you got an
Too
older
far.
one then.
Yeah. 1795, between 1795 and 1798.
Oops.
This is the one guy we can't find.
Well, I think when you get that far back, you are getting pretty, okay. What about this first record? Does it look like perhaps him?
I think that the one that has Stenrod in there, that is probably the link somewhere.
Which one?
That first one.
This first one?
Yeah, I recognize the Phoebe and the Stenrod and
Okay.
Rebecca.
Okay. As you can see over here, there is an image of this particular. Okay. You wanted to do that, did we? Okay, there's details and then there's an image. Well, I have not logged. Let me sign in and we can take a look. Once you And what's really nice about this database is you can stay logged in for 2 weeks. See that?
No, his name, well, he grew up until he was 18 million.
And it will remember you.
And now it's
Okay, so we're back here. I've logged in now. And here's the image. Maybe. Okay. I can assure you there's usually some sort of an image, but there it comes. Okay. So already you found that there is something out there.
There's some connection, yeah, and to be honest with you, I just know we're stuck on him, I don't know what my mom is actually missing, and she has, like you said, like, tons and tons and tons, like, when she gets the stuff out, it takes up an entire kitchen, you know?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, I'm not sure
Okay.
which part she's missing from him.
And of course you can scroll in and see. The 1850 census, as you can see, very sparse in its information. The census takers got wiser as they went along. 1840 census is out there, but all you will find on the 1840 census is the homeowner's name and then a list with just a little strikes for how many people are in the household that are male of this age, female of that age range, etc. So sometimes you're like piecing together a family. You may have the names, but you're not sure where they lived in 1840, but you can kind of line them up, and you make a very good educated guess. My rule of thumb when I'm doing research is if I feel happy with what I found, that's the correct information for me. And that way you can feel good that yours doesn't align with somebody else who's been doing information. And I can assure you, when you get this far back, 1700s, 1600s, you'll have somebody, and somebody out there has completely different parents for this person than you do. You have to settle with what you feel is right from your research point of view. And then you go on to the next person. Let's see if, so these other ones could have been him. He could have been in the Civil War. This would be his Civil War record. A couple of Civil War records right here. And I'm sure they would probably come up with quite a few hits in Ancestry as well. I like to switch between the two when I'm doing research because, as I said, they're very similar in some of their content, but there's also differences in their content. If you're thinking of jumping the pond, as we say, this particular resource is very, very good, especially if you had ancestors who came across in the Great Migrations in the 1800s. In England, they started mandatory registration of births, marriages, and deaths in 1837. Okay? So if you had somebody who came here in those Great Migrations, you might be able to find them in this particular database. What it gives you is, and you can search this, as you can see, you can search by all the different types. I would search one type at a time that you're looking for, and you would put in the names, surname, last name. The other day I put them the wrong way around and couldn't figure out why I couldn't find anything.
Now this is for
England. England, Wales, Scotland, and maybe Northern Ireland, I'm not sure.
Okay, do we have anything like that where you can look up a marriage record for here?
I've never found it, no.
Really?
No. Because of course it's a much smaller area to cover. You know, you're thinking, I mean, millions of people, yes, but you're covering an area that's no bigger than one of the states here in the United States. If I find something, I'll certainly let you know.
Can you go to the churches in that area to search for marriage records?
You mean here in America?
In England.
Yes, yes, they were meticulous at keeping their, and on Ancestry and Family Search, you will find a lot of those parish records. They were very, very up on getting their, I read one time in a book that you could actually be fined for not registering or having your children baptized in the local parish church. And so usually within a month of a child being born, they were baptized and christened. So there's very, very good records kept over there. When you're in Ancestry, it will give you this information that you can get from this particular database. Okay? It will come up as one of the resources. It's an index, and what it does, it tells you in where, if you find the person, it tells you within a 3-month range of when they were born, died, or married. Okay? Because their books are kept by 3 months. There's 4 quarters in the year. It will tell you the year, it will tell you the location, and it will give an index number which gives you the volume and the page number that particular birth certificate appears on that page. Here's the caution. In Ancestry, they will ask you if you want to purchase this certificate. Don't do it through Ancestry. It costs you about 3 times as much as if you go through the registry office directly from England. It costs you about $10 to get. And they'll send it to you. It takes a few weeks to come because they send it what I call slow boat mail. But it costs about $10. If you do it through Ancestry, I think they want to charge you about $33. Okay? And they'll do it for you.
You say we go through.
It's the, I think it's on the guide. It's the GRO, okay, there you go. See where it says the GRO through the certificate ordering service right here?
Yeah.
It's on the left. Oh, these are just examples of the records that you'll find. What's really neat with marriage records from over there is that there's only 4 on a page, sometimes maybe 2. So you might be presented with 2 male names and 2 female names. Wow. Process of elimination. Try and find a census record with that man, with his particular wife, and you'll know who their maiden name is. Okay, it's a little bit more difficult because the pages for births and whatever are like this long and they don't give much information. But through this particular website, you can find those marriages, and as I said, it'll present you with maybe 4 or 5 names, and it's not too hard to figure it out usually.
Can we go back to where you were, that English one, or the one that was England, and put in a name that I have?
You mean this births and marriages?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where you were right before this page.
Oh, yeah, let me just, right here, I talk about the certificates here, and as I said, you just click here, fill out the form, put in the information that you've gotten from this database, and they will ship that to you. It's really nice. Okay. So, what do you want to look at here?
Well, it says her birth was 1635.
Well, it wouldn't be in here.
Oh, it does go back that far.
1837.
And England was where it was, 1600s, okay.
What was her name?
Susanna Fisher.
Not my line. My people are Kent too. So, okay.
Wendy, how are the records for like adoptions? I mean, that has to throw a curveball at you.
And they're hard to find. They are starting to come in, but they are hard to find. They're one of those records out there that have not, people have kind of, the governments have kept hold of them, because they're very, very private, and it's hard to find. But the one thing you are seeing more and more now is criminal records. If this one particular guy in my line is on my line, he was a horse thief. And after repeatedly being caught for petty larceny, I came across a record where he was supposed to be hung as a horse thief. Actually, there was a record of where he took the horse from and where he took it to, and got caught. But I have not been able to quite connect him to the family for sure. So those are the things you keep stored until you find that.
From John Aniston.
Okay. Do you know when he was?
In 1915,
Okay. E.C.
the Elias,
John?
yes.
Okay, you think 1915? And see, what you have here are those 4
September.
things. Well, let's go wider.
Okay.
1914 to December 1960. Oh, I must select. Oh, I didn't select the. Okay, and here are your records here. You said you think it's September?
Yes.
Do you know where he was born? This list.
Sure. That's it, John M. R.
Right here.
So
There you go. Smith, this I believe would be his mother's maiden name.
Yes.
And these little areas here, you can click in them and you can see where they're located in England. Okay? If you're not sure. And here we can look at the page. And all it really gives you is actually this information. So right here what you have, if you're going to order this certificate, is you want the fact that it was Stoke T, and that's Stoke-on-Trent, I think.
Yes.
Volume 6B, page 419. Okay, if you go in here, it's going to show you everybody else that appears in that on that page. You can actually view the page if you want to, but as I said, it's just an index. So the information, you've already got the information that you want. See, here's the page itself, and if we scroll in, you can see it's just a whole bunch of names and that exact information. So don't make yourself work more than you need to. And if you wanted to order that certificate, I can show you how to do it. And, I've been pursuing a relative at the moment, and she put one thing on her marriage certificate, and I'm not sure what she was correct. So I'm trying to find the birth records. Okay, so that was a fast way around. Feel free to come in and ask at the library anytime. You can use any of the computers to get on Ancestry.
I found it.
Thank you. Very good one.
Thank you.
For
They got some forms here.
Yeah.
Forms?
Yeah.
Perception, is it here?
Or don't mind.
Your father okay?
Yeah.
All your classes under control and everything?
Yeah, that's where my main emphasis on trying to keep that in order. And,
In the morning to help
yeah,
because I
so
volunteer.
that's what I was talking to Sue about.
That's in the morning. And then I'm
Typically
leaving
Monday,
in the
Wednesdays,
evening
I'm
to my
not here,
daughter's
but
house.
depending
That's her
on,
birthday.
like this past week was just
Now it's
crazy, so
What are you guys doing?
hoping after tomorrow we get
I
a
think we're just
routine.
gonna have everything signed and say Tuesday,
I'm gonna
slogan that the ABTA is doing
Where do you guys?
18 months, but I think we're gonna do it in unless it's really nice out.
You know, I think that it's really
Which would be,
And then you find things, I mean,
It would be really pretty if you got them on the steps of your
yes,
house.
but that's.
I don't know that we'd have enough room to
Yeah.
watch TV.
How many are there?
24
I was
and
born
28.
in, just outside of London.
Oh, there's two groups. So you're gonna take one
And
picture
I
of two
actually
groups,
have a photo
which
of
do out
my
here in the
brother
commons
sitting
area.
with a friend, just
Put 'em up on, like, if you, if it's a nice day and they could go
My
up, like,
family.
even sit on the ground and like stand like up on the hill and you stand down below and shoot up. You get more of them in that way.
No, they didn't. And I had a suburban life, being kind of in the city or country as well, and, you know, so we were.
So where are you gonna leave your
Come out
camera?
of London.
I can leave it with Paula. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I relate to.
I mean, it's always in my office and I can leave it at my desk on 10. But I can just, okay.
Yeah.
I don't trust you like that when you're at desk.
No, I don't think.
So I've got all these goodies.
Run over there and I'll be right back.
Okay.
All right?
But, no, this guy, there was a girl that I used to work with in Weird Steel posted something on Facebook about this Rex Stockton's obituary. And so I tried to message her, her name's Candy, and I said, Candy, like, Candy, do you know Rex Stockton? How did you know Rex Stockton? She said, he was the best man in my, she's North now, in our wedding, mine and Brian's wedding. And I was like, oh my gosh, what happened? And she said he had colorectal cancer, but cancer spread to his kidneys. And I said, well, if you have an open or anything, so she sent me a link to the funeral home. 52, 53, I don't know, anyway, he graduated from West Liberty. Went on to be, I know Amy knows him because I went through my Quaker State pictures and there's pictures of us as a group and he was in there. And his sister Robin was there, she was bizarre. But he was like an FBI agent that worked in some, and he did train dogs and